So in this video I played the Resident Evil 2 remake in 2023 for the first time. I'll be giving an overall review and my thoughts on the game to let you know if it still holds up, almost 4 years after its release in 2019. Now for anyone that doesn't know, this is a remake, not a remaster, of the 1998 original. So it's reimagined with incredible visuals, a similar yet revamped storyline, and tons of new and improved gameplay features. There are remakes of 3 and 4 which I'll be playing next along with the rest of the series, all of them for the first time, so God knows how I'll turn out after all. I decided to leave out the first game as that hasn't got a modern day remake, apart from the 2002 one, meaning it's still very outdated, and not really a lot to it. If you really would like to see that, then maybe I will check it out, or just wait for a new remake which is supposedly happening, but I'm not sure when. With that being said, if you go on to enjoy or find this video helpful, then let me know by tapping that like button down below, and if you enjoy story games, then I have an array of videos on the channel of our various ones, with a playlist of a series in the description. Now let's jump into Resident Evil 2, the remake. I'll start with the story, where I must mention that I only played through one of the character stories, which was Leon's. Basically, before you start the game you can pick which protagonist story you want to follow, and that's Leon's or Claire's. The story still follows the same days of events in almost the exact same places, but through both perspectives, meaning there's differences in characters they meet and weapons. So what I'm saying is that I'll only be showcasing Leon's story in this video, which will give you a good idea of what type of story and narrative you'll be getting yourself into, with no major spoilers. I'll run through the basis and what I thought of it. So the game opens up with Leon starting his first day as a cop in the RPD, which is the Raccoon Police Department, taking place in the fictional area of Raccoon City, based on Montreal, Canada. The biggest aspect of the entire Resident Evil franchise and what pretty much everyone knows about the games. It of course follows that theme of zombies and horror. Therefore when Leon turns up on that same day, the zombie apocalypse had started. So for the intro it's really not anything crazy, and I expected this, not only because it's based on a 25-year-old game, but also because I knew that we would start with a zombie outbreak and I'll have to follow Leon's survival. In the prologue, Leon and Claire meet each other and stick with each other until they're separated due to a car crash and the abundance of zombies, meaning for the majority of the game Leon is without Claire, though he still gets to interact with other characters who were equally as engaging as Claire. There's not that many, which I expected because there's very few humans left near Leon, the main supporting cast being Marvin, who you meet with first, and Ada. So really not a lot, and Ada has more of the engagement with Leon throughout the whole game, but both are very well put together characters who weren't basic at all, which can easily be done because they're only side characters and can easily be less interesting. Having a lot less to work on obviously did help them. Both of them are strong and I enjoyed playing the game with them. You can also see that relationship build and that connection with Leon unfold. Ada's a very strong example with her mysterious personality at the start and focused mindset. She's quite upfront with Leon and many times very impressed, meaning that she does want to help. As I mentioned, Claire follows a very similar story to Leon, and that's followed in this story, meaning that you'll rarely meet her, which makes sense. One of the biggest aspects of the whole narrative is learning and figuring out how this outbreak started, and Ada helps Leon figure it out, slowly becoming more clear as you progress. Ultimately, the story was written really well. There is one last character to mention who's the main antagonist of the game, and that is Mr. X. Not saying he's there throughout everything and also doesn't really say a word, but he really doesn't need any deep character creation as he's scary enough. You meet him after progressing through trying to escape the police station, and I really don't have much to say when you meet him. It's scary as hell. He basically just follows you and tries to catch you, meaning it instantly adds that pressure that was already there slightly before due to the overwhelming amount of zombies and jump scares, and now he's behind your back. If you shoot him he doesn't die, but instead has to rest before he gets up again and then chases you. It sounds as terrifying as it is to play. I'll go into more detail when I talk about gameplay. So as I mentioned, the story, although may not be the most in-depth, which I totally expected, because it's more so the gameplay as well as it being just a typical zombie horror, but those characters' relationships, just like Leon and Ada, as well as more of a deeper look into everything about the apocalypse, is what was so immersive to follow, linked with the gameplay of course. Now the gameplay is filled to the brim with puzzles, secret codes, usually for you to unlock a blocked pathway, where usually I wouldn't really be a fan if it wasn't set in this horror theme and where the majority of the game places you inside a room and many hallways. I actually found it really fun to explore the entire police station at the start and go back through probably almost 100 times to pick up an item and figure out a code. That's what most of the gameplay is. Overall the puzzles aren't too difficult. It mainly requires you to remember places you've been and items you've picked up, and I think that was the most challenging challenging thing for me. There were so many times where I had to sort out my inventory so I can hold important items that I will reuse over and over, like a key, wire cutter, electronic part, a knife. There's an abundance of unique items. Some may even have to be used once and then you just discard it, even though it took you around the whole building to find it, and that will take you to your next part. This is usually because there's a conveniently placed obstacle to block you, like a hole in the wall or a literal helicopter crash, but I loved everything about this thinking and tactical gameplay style, which I'm sure will be a running theme in the whole series. Not to forget, this is intertwined with the vast amount of zombies trying to attack you, where some you may expect and others you don't, so it really adds to that immersion, and of course that horror theme. The way you defeat these zombies is with your gun loadout. There's not an endless amount of weapons to choose from, but you don't really need that much variety when it's always in a tight enclosed space for the most part. Not to say there isn't though, you can use various handguns, shotguns, rifles, SMGs, combat knives, miniguns, even rocket launchers and flamethrowers, though I didn't see myself using very much with all the hallways you have to go down, but I think this variety is good for a game like this, that arguably doesn't really need a huge amount. The melees and side weapons can be used alongside your main weapons, and they feel smooth to switch to and isn't too difficult when you're mid-battle, and even if you do get grabbed, if you have a sub-weapon like a knife, it's very easy to get the zombie off you so you don't die. You can also modify your weapons with small attachments you find along the way, either on the ground or figuring out a code for a safe, and feels very rewarding to actually use. There's not loads, but I did like this customization, like an additional muzzle, gun stock and a magazine, which helps a lot with the tanky enemies. It's the same with the weapons themselves. Some also have a complex and sometimes lengthy puzzle for you to unlock them, like where you would find one part of the puzzle, and then you have to progress through further into the story until you get the other, and then after that you have to go all the way back, so it really does give that rewarding feeling. You can also collect resources like gunpowder and herbs to create more ammo by combining them together. It's fairly simple and easy to use. The resources aren't sparse but also aren't too common. You can also find other items like health spray that heals you a lot, and even throwable items you use like flash and frag grenades, which were fun to experiment with, especially if you're about to get grabbed, as well as extra inventory bags, which helps a lot because, as I mentioned, you have to think very carefully about what you do and don't carry. Every time I found one I thought I wouldn't need any more, and it always turned out I did. You may need to discard items you don't need, or if you're not sure you can place them in an item box dotted around in a few rooms. All these gameplay features combined just adds to that tactical playstyle and thinking, which I really enjoyed. The enemy types are fairly varied as well. The majority of them do take a hefty amount of ammo to kill, even when you constantly shoot them in the head, meaning it may take a little longer than you think, which I didn't expect to be honest, as they're zombies, so I thought they would die extremely quickly. Some do and some don't, but it adds to that engagement either way. There's the standard zombies mixed with the occasional licker, which is absolutely terrifying. They're extremely fast and climb up any obstacle on the side of walls and ceilings, meaning they can easily go out of your view when trying to track them, as well as how fast they can move. There's also zombie dogs in the Woody and Birkin. Some could say there should be more of the other varieties instead of just the standard zombies, but I think with the other types I mentioned being quite rare to see it makes them more unexpected and scary to come across. As I mentioned earlier, I do want to talk about the scariest enemy type of them all, Mr. X. He will follow you around by hearing the sound of your footsteps and gunshots, with a slight cooldown if you shoot him enough, but can never actually be killed by getting shot. They made him so terrifying by the way you hear his loud footsteps coming increasingly closer, or him popping around a corner and starts running at you from the end of the hallway. They designed his character really well. The way he's twice the size of you and the animation of his menacing tough walk and incredibly strong punch he performs when he catches you. Looking back, there were so many funny moments of me just watching a door open and him slowly marching through it, but in the moment it really is terrifying and goes with the whole theme of the game, which brings me on to the world of Resident Evil 2. As I've said, the majority of the game, you're in this RPD police station that has multiple floors and extra underground floors. Because of how much exploring and roaming you do around it, it becomes quite easy to navigate around it all, even though it is a maze and there's so many narrow hallways and small rooms you have to go through so you can enter another area. And not to mention, everywhere you go, apart from the main hall, is in very dark and low lighting, which of course emphasises that creepy atmosphere. You can use your flashlight whilst holding your gun, which was good. It would have been difficult to kill and complete complete darkness, though this doesn't mean the light takes away the horror. There's plenty of jump scares of zombies being behind doors, bursting through windows and hanging from the ceiling. Even when you defeat them, it becomes hard to tell if they're actually dead, and then they suddenly start jumping up again. You honestly don't know what to expect when you walk through, and even when you think there's none left in that area, there's always going to be another zombie that will jump out of nowhere. There really was that feeling of satisfactory when you finish a puzzle as well, as I mentioned, but also when you escape an area, for you to then realise there's still more to do. It always has that feeling of just wanting to get out of there so bad and move forward, which is sometimes not that easy to do in a video game. There's also areas where you'll be outside or in the sewers. Looking at the whole game, it's only a small section because you're mostly inside rooms, which I expected anyway, but it does give that small change in pace, and honestly relaxation from all the chaos, even though it does become equally as terrifying in those areas, with the most bizarre creatures in boss fights. The visuals and graphics of the game are incredible and look stunning. The attention to detail when passing through and seeing blood splattered on the wall from zombies and guts on the floor. The animation in all the zombies and ragdoll physics as well was one of my favourite things. It just was so realistic, I couldn't help but be blown away by the detail put into the character design. They really just hit the nail on the head in visuals, even down to the clothing design on the zombies and how they're all varied, and of course rugged and bloodstained. They all look so realistic and gruesome, really adding to the immersion of the game. The lighting through the windows as well, and your torch, with light reflecting so realistically on surfaces. It's some of the best graphics I've seen. The terrifying sound of the zombies screeching and creaking of floorboards, howling of wind through windows, and then not to mention mixed with the chilling soundtrack, all created a top tier horror game that, even though was scary, which I expected, I really did have a fun time playing through. And that's where I wrap up my review of Resident Evil 2 the remake in 2023. This was my first look into Resident Evil, as I mentioned. I haven't played any or even really seen any gameplay of the other games, new and old, so I went into it completely blind, and I have to say it's definitely worth playing, and for sure holds up now and years on end. If you're looking for a fun and immersive horror, with of course a bunch of scares, then this is a great place to start. And I can't wait to play through all the other games in the series, with Resident Evil 3, once again, the remake, up next. So if you enjoyed or found this video helpful, then let me know by tapping that like button down below. And if you enjoy story video games, then that's what this channel is all about, with a playlist of a random series in the description, and my last video should be on the screen now. Thank you for watching until the very end, and make sure to give your thoughts of this game in the comments, and bye bye.